start recording. So change management comes at this point after we have already spoken about incident management, right? So our incident management, problem management, and then comes to change management. And the idea being that when we have incidents that occur, and we see these incidents occurring in a pattern, that could be an underlying problem. And so that problem management is about sort of identifying that pattern among the incidents and recording it and sort of preparing for some establishing what are the root causes. And then at some point, there will have to be some change made to the system coming out of our problem management. So I'm trying to just show you there that there's a sort of these things are not isolated. Change management isn't just standing on its own. It is related to our incident management and our problem management. And we'll see at the in this slide, it also refers to a thing called configuration management. These things are all sort of related in together as part of our ITSM, our information technology service management. So change management is going to be about the system itself. All right. So do we have to make some changes to the system? Let's look at how we do that. How do we do that in the most economical, in the most effective way, so that our changes are not getting out of control, so that we have a control on our changes, and so that our system stays as stable as possible. That's always kind of the goal. And so change management feeds into that. And I hope that makes some sense to you. So that's why you'll see here the goals. When it's talking about the goals here, we're talking about what are we trying to achieve with our change management? What is the goal of change management? And you see there that it's all about control of things. You can see that. I hope you can see. We want to control the changes that we have in our systems. And so we want to make sure that everything is recorded properly, it's authorized properly, it's documented, so that things don't get out of control. I hope that makes sense. Configuration management, I mentioned that just a second ago. That's referred to here. You can think of that as well, we'll have a whole lecture on it, so I won't go into it in great detail here. But our configuration management is going to be how does the system look? What kind of records do we have for the entire system? That would all be part of our configuration management. Obviously, change management is going to affect it. If we change the system, then the configuration has changed, right? And so therefore, we have to update the configuration management. So cyclical, remember we talked about total quality, this cyclical kind of idea. When a change is requested, we're going to do some kind of analysis. There'll be an approval process. Then the change will be implemented. All of these things will be carefully standardized and controlled. That is what our change management is about, is making sure that these things happen in a careful way. Please, when you look at this slide deck, please do have a look at this link. I'm not going to go through it here because it's a 5-minute video and I want to sort of keep this brief. But what I want to say to you is please do go and have a look at that. If you click on that, it will open up a 5-minute video where a cartoon character with a British accent is going to explain to you a bit about change management. It is specific to the types of to ITSM. Well, actually, a lot of the examples are kind of car shop examples, but they're just using those as nice analogies, right? You know, so if your car battery goes bad, then you have to change the battery, then you would do some change management, and you know, and so it's just looking at things that we would say are accessible to you. You can see, I'm sure most of us have had a car and maybe had to do some changes to a car. And so what would be the management of that process? And so that video is a nice one. When you're looking at the video, and I am encouraging you to look at that video, when you're looking at the video, do keep in mind, how would this affect working in an IT environment? And hopefully that video will help you. So yeah, there you go. I'm not going to go through that video because you can watch that in your time. So aside from keeping things in control, all right, so aside from keeping things in control, there's some other benefits of having a change process, right? It's not just allowing changes to happen ad hoc, but having some kind of change in it, and it's having some process. So here's some of the benefits there. I hope you can see it's going to save time and money, and it's going to have less likely to have changes that fail. Basically, you're just adding um, uh, some order to things. Increasing the level of order is going to give you a better result. That's what we're hoping. Okay, and so that's what that's all about, right? So if you don't have good change management, that is, you will know it because there will be changes happening in your system without proper approval, without proper assignment of people to it. Okay, and then there's going to be uh, changes that occur that are not successful. Outages are going to happen, emergencies, etc. Okay, so the idea of our change management is that we want to reduce these things by having some control. Okay. And so that's why we do things like this. You'll find that if you are working in a IT environment where they have a good change management process, every change that occurs is going to have some kind of authorization. Now you'll see in a couple of slides a bit later on in this slideshow, there are certain kinds of changes that are sort of pre approved. So, for example, if you have somebody wants to have a password change, and just that type of change is going to be pre-approved. We don't need to go to a manager and get them to sign off on it. On the other hand, if we have other changes which are of a different type, we need to have specific approval with to make sure that it conforms with the control that we have on our organization. Um, so then there's a prioritization. Centralized management, you'll notice, okay, the different, so I guess theories of management. In the IT world, we are very much affected by the business environment. And interestingly, here we are in the College of the North Atlantic, and the School of IT, used to be the School of IT, is now part of the School of Business Management and Information Technology. There's always been their natural sort of uh, partners, IT and business. But the point that about the centralized management is you'll see that businesses kind of go through cycles where they increase their centralization of their management, and then they devolve out to less centralized management. Okay, so there's benefits and there's disadvantages of both. But one of the real benefits of centralized management is control, and I've used that word like already like 10 times in this lesson, right? And that's because if we want our systems to be stable, they have to be controlled somehow. And so centralized management is big on control. That's going to help. And so obviously, if we wanted to have a controlled environment, centralized management would be the way to go. So the next couple of slides, I've already previewed the idea there. And so I hope this makes sense to you that there are different kinds of changes. And so depending on the type of change, the type of process required to get that change to happen will be different. And so as it says here, we've got this one kind of change, which is a low risk changes. That's things like a password reset. You have a pre-approval process for that. And so the level of uh, inspection, I guess you could say, analysis that has to go into deciding whether to go ahead with that is much, much less. It's pre-approved. Yeah, somebody wants to change their password, boom, we just do that. We don't need to sign off or anything like that. So we have our standard change, which is fairly stock standard. We don't need approval on that. So a normal change that is going to have some kind of analysis, and a change manager is going to be able to do that change. It would not be very often, and there would be procedures in place for that. An emergency change, on the other hand, this could be something where the outage is severe, or it's urgent right now. We might go ahead and make the change. It's kind of like, fix, and then we'll deal with the way the things land later. All right. And so we're going to do our fixing, and the documentation will be sort of in the cleanup afterwards. And so that's because of an emergency. But But with our normal changes, we will get approval before we do that. So that's like, the joke amongst the biker guys, I like my motorcycles, right? And if you're married, it's always a good idea to sort of when you're buying things to discuss that with your partner. So motorcycle purchases, they're emergency changes. What I mean by that is you buy the motorcycle and then afterwards you sort it out. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. The importance of standard changes, right? Okay, so standard changes like the password, those things we need to make them streamlined. We need to make them happen as slickly as possible, I guess you could say, without too much sort of paperwork. And so, yeah, I hope that makes sense. Now, we have this concept here called a request for change, and that is a process which is going to involve some paperwork. So if you're in a large organization, people will the problem in a large organization, or the problems in a large organization, is you have many different departments, many different people using the same systems. And so those many different people and many different departments, they have different needs. And so so it's quite likely that somebody in the engineering department using the same computer system as somebody in the health sciences department, they're going to look at it and they're going to have different needs. And the people in the health science might say, oh, we should have this change happen. And so the IT people can't just do that without considering how it's going to impact on the other users. And so a process that's going to allow that consideration to happen will include a request for change document. So anybody can say, well, the people in engineering can say, well, the system would be a lot better if we did this and this. And then a committee can look at that and see how it's going to impact the rest of the organization, and then approval can be given. Now, I'm going to go back and refer you to that video that I didn't look at, that I didn't press the link, that I'm encouraging you to press the link. That video talks about the 7 R's of change management. And these are the 7 R's, which is basically who is asking for the change, because that's important, right? I mean, there is a hierarchy within all organizations. If somebody at the top of the organization asks for a change, that is going to give a different priority to the change than if your new employee at the bottom of the organization makes that query. The reason for the change is going to be, this is all part of your analysis. The return, that's talking about dollars and cents, or Qatar rials and dirhams. Risks means, what's the downside? We put this change in. Is anything possibly going to go bad? How much people, how much resources, how much computers do we need to make this change possible? Who's going to do that and take responsibility? And how does it affect other systems? All right, so we use this word priority, and I mentioned that in the previous slide. And so I hope you can get the idea. If you have a priority which is immediate, that means just what it says. You're going to get onto that task and make that change now, immediately. High would be happen sooner and with more resources than low. I hope that makes sense. And so here we have some definitions of those, or some examples of these kind of priorities. If you have an immediate priority, that's because if you don't fix it now, you're going to pay. You're going to be sorry, right? High, there's a big impact, but it's not as bad as something which has an immediate priority. Down to low, well, we do need to make the change, but we can wait until we got some other things done. So for example, when we do our upgrade, whereas medium, we can do that, but let's do it before we do the upgrade. I like this quadrant meaning 4 different sections. The urgency across the bottom, high urgency in this corner, low urgency there. The importance, so the importance urgency quadrant, I suppose you could call that, which here is called the priority matrix. Do you see that the red is there because these things are important and are urgent. So, if you were working on a banking system and the network went down, it would be important to fix that network. It would also be urgent because you just cannot run a banking business without your network. That would mean that your ATMs wouldn't work, etc. On the other hand, you could have things which are urgent, like your telephone is ringing. That's urgent because urgency just means, right now. Your telephone's ringing. If you don't answer it now, you miss that call. That's urgent, but it might not be important because when you look at the call number on your telephone, you see that it's, I don't know, Carrefour or Monoprix or something calling you about some promotion they have, right? That's not important. Or, maybe it's a Facebook sort of notification that you've got on your phone that one of your friends has got a picture of them in a silly hat or something like that. Okay, so it's urgent, but it's not important. So maybe we will do that later, or maybe don't do it. Actually, maybe the Facebook thing would be not urgent either. Yeah, the telephone call, that would be urgent. Facebook was not urgent because you can look at that later. Yeah, so yeah, that would be the Facebook one. So on the other hand, you can have things that are really important, but they're not urgent. And so an example of that would be you're planning for the next system, which is going to be implemented next year sometime, right? It's really important that you get that planning done. But do you have to do it right now? No, I mean, you could do it tonight instead of sleeping. No, just kidding. But you do have to get onto it, but it's not urgent that you'll do it as soon as you got a free minute kind of thing. I hope that makes sense. So you don't want to, the key words here in this idea of our change management is that we're controlling that. And so we have some kind of management approval system, right? And so there'll be a hierarchy meaning that there's a someone at the top of your organization has blanket sort of approval ability, and you have people at the bottom that have to that can approve limited things. So depending on where they fit in the system, and so that is represented by this document. So where we have the authority as we go up. So the people at the bottom, they can make they have approval authority for small changes, standard changes. As you go up the organization, your approval authorization goes up for more things. All right, and yeah, I hope that makes sense. So KPI is just another management term, key performance indicators. The old saying in management is that you can't manage something if you can't measure it. And so key performance indicators are ways that we measure the things that we want to manage. And so how are we going to measure to see if our change management is working and it's in control? Here's some of the things that we could do. We could measure how many unauthorized changes happen over a certain period of time. How many change requests do we have in our backlog? What is the number and percentage of, sorry, I can't read that word. Emergency changes, yes. So obviously we would want to reduce those emergency changes, fail changes, etc. So each of these would be measured, and based on those measurements, we would say that our change management is in control or not. Okay, and I think that's the last slide. There we go. Every service will undergo changes. Changes and change management are going to be part of any system which has any planning at all in it. And you hope that you work first with a system which has some planning on it. All right, so I hope that sort of made some sense to you. That's our change management. Any questions on that? And I'm going to pause. Okay, so yeah, just back on the project, a nice little plan, which is 3 pages. That's due this week. Then your website framework due 2 weeks from there, 2 weeks from now. That's going to be an outline It'll also have all of the folders that you need for your website and the bare bones skeleton documents in them. Then you have to make a video. And as I said, I recommend you use YouTube. And then you can, when you share that, you can embed it into your. You'll be if you go to YouTube and go to share, and then you choose the embedded. It'll give you some code that you can copy, and you can paste that into an HTML document, and that will be an embedded video. That's how I would do it. Um, so you need to have a flow chart on what you would do for a change management. And that's just what we've been talking about today, right? So you need to do a little bit more research and find out what are the steps that you would do if you were going to do change management. Get the authorizations right. Actually, have a look at that video too. That video that was um, in the PowerPoint document. And yeah, so then you're going to do a form. You're going to create a form, some frequently asked questions, and then you have a choice of enhancements. So at the end of the course, you're going to do a presentation. Right. So that's